Cool. Do we have anyone in the waiting room, or are we good to start?
You could just start.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining me. I would like to request, if you're willing, to put on your camera. It helps me a lot to see faces and know how this is landing for you. I would love to see that. I know that we're recording, so I completely understand if you don't want to have your face in the recording. But the more faces I get, the easier it is to know if I'm hitting the mark. My next request to you is that if you want to ask a question, please just come off mute and interrupt me with questions. It is likely I will miss what's going on in chat, or chat will disrupt my flow in a way that it makes it harder for me. So please feel free to interrupt if you have any questions as we go. Cool. So just a little quick intro about me. My name is Jessica Katz. I run an organization called Liberated Elephant. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I'll give some contact information at the end, but you can find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect there. I am an Agile coach. I have been doing Agile coaching since 2014, and I have been in the Agile community for over a decade now, with a background in project management. Any questions about me before I get started? Okay, cool. So here's my intention today. My intention today is to help you begin or continue your journey of participating fully in all communications in your life and work. So nonviolent communication, which is what the model we're gonna leverage today, is not just limited to the office or to agility. It's something that you can use in every aspect of your life. One of the concepts that sits in this for me is that we are whole beings, and each one of us is complete and does not need fixing. So we want to take our communication from a perspective of everyone is doing the best they can. So that'll be two sort of setting foundational stones for how we're going to talk today and what we're going to learn about today. My hope is that you come out the other side with an understanding of both T, which comes from cognitive behavioral therapy, and MBC. And then you'll have some opportunity to practice. And if for some reason we run out of time, you can take your practice home with you and do that later. Right. If at any time I want to set up an activity and you don't feel like participating, don't feel obligated. This is a consent-friendly environment. So if you don't want to participate, that's okay with me. Any questions about what we're talking about today or what my intentions are?
One thing, can everyone please mute their computers because we're having some background noise? Thank you.
Awesome. Well, that gave me a chance to take a drink of water. So, all right. So what I need you to do, if you're interested in participating, is get a piece of paper. Give everyone a minute to grab a piece of paper. You're going to need it to be loose leaf or a piece of computer paper or separate from your notebook. Okay. All right, so I'm going to display one instruction at a time. Please follow the instructions, and then if you feel comfortable doing so, display your end result at the in your camera. So 6 easy steps. Step 1, fold the paper in half and unfold it. Okay. Step 2, fold the paper in half again. Step 3, fold the top corners down. Step 4, fold the bottom up. Step 5, fold the bottom up again. Oh, I'm sorry, flip the paper over. And then step 6 is fold the bottom up again. So those are your next 2 steps. All right, those are our 6 steps. Anybody want to show their work in the cameras? All right, we have lots of different shapes. Some shapes are kind of similar. All right, here's what you were trying to do. Everybody in the process made assumptions about what was top, what was bottom, which way was I supposed to fold the paper. What are you noticing about this exercise?
Everybody's interpretation was going to be different because it wasn't specific.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, details are very important.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like asking questions, but nobody else was. Like, is it half or how is much? But I didn't, so.
Okay, I wouldn't have answered them. Any other observations?
It was fun.
Good, good. So what's happening in our brains when people are communicating to us is we're filling in a lot of gaps. And what you did during this exercise is filled in a bunch of gaps. Here's how it works in our brain. So first I want to put this disclosure. I'm not a neuroscientist. I've looked up this information. I may inaccurately represent it. If so, I apologize. But so the limbic system, which is this system that's colored here on the brain, categorizes human emotional experiences and is also responsible for where and how to store memory related to those experiences. The hypothalamus, this one that's colored in green, I don't think it's green in our real brain, but this one that's colored green, works with the autonomic nervous system to create physical actions or reactions, such as a fast heart rate if we're nervous. It also works with the sympathetic nervous system. So this one is enacting our nervous system, generally speaking. The thalamus, this blue piece right here, transmits sensory input to the amygdala and the higher order thinking brain. So it's the communication between our lizard brain and our upper thinking brain. The amygdala is where emotions come from, and it communicates, or where we speculate emotions come from now, and it communicates to the thinking brain. This is often what we call our lizard brain. This is the brain that goes into a part of our brain that enacts fight, flight, freeze, or fawn reactions. It is the one that serves up whatever emotion it is we're going to feel in any given moment. And then the hippocampus is responsible for integrating the information received from the thinking brain and the amygdala. And if we don't want the amygdala to rule things, this is the part of the brain we're training in our communications. This is the part of the brain we want to train to react differently when we have emotions. Any questions about that? All right. I want to ask a favor. We're going to do another exercise, and I'm going to have to do this a little bit of an honor system. So one of the things that is true about our brain is that we are already primed by all our experiences and beliefs and interactions, and our emotions often happen in reaction to those things and not the actual facts. So I want to do an activity where we really investigate what priming looks like. So those of you whose videos are displayed, if you will close your eyes for a moment. Okay, and those of you that do not have video on, keep your eyes open. And I'm going to show you a picture. And then I want to ask those folks with the cameras off to go ahead and write down the word you think that is indicated here. I'll give you a few moments. Okay. Now the folks with the cameras on, go ahead and open your eyes and you write down the word you think is true of what's here. Okay. All right. Which word did you write down? See soap for the cameras? Soap. For anybody that's not on, yeah, the left-hand side got to soup. Yep. So those that were not on camera, they wrote down soup. The ones that were on camera wrote down soap. That's because
I put red water soap. I thought it was like the combination of stuff, like, you know, waterfall and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is essentially a priming exercise. Your brain was already primed to come to that word. And just like that, our brains fill in all the gaps. So first thing to note, our brains cannot be trusted. Right? All right, so let's talk about tea. So this comes from cognitive behavioral therapy. This is called the cognitive triangle. And again, I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach. Coaching is different than therapy, but a lot of our practice in coaching is informed by therapy, what happens in therapy, or what they know in the therapeutic education system. So that's where this comes from. I have checked it with somebody who is officially certified as a therapist. All right. So the first thing that happens, we have a thought. It triggers an emotion. The emotion triggers an action, and the action can trigger an additional thought. What this is all tied to is an event. So we'll have some sort of event that happens. And when I use the word trigger here, I'm using little t triggers. Yes, it is true that some people have big triggers in their life, former abuse, they might be PTSD sufferers, any number of matters could cause them to have a big T trigger. But I'm going to use little t triggers here. So not necessarily abuse-oriented triggers, though those do play in here as well. But here's the idea. An event happens. And from that event, we have some thought. It's full of all kinds of judgment and assumptions and beliefs and expectations that we don't ever say to anybody usually. And then that triggers the emotion. And then the emotion triggers an action. We take an action. Somebody responds to that action, which is a new event, and we have a new thought. So that's essentially how the cycle goes. What we want to do is stop it here or here. If we can pause the cycle, we can make a choice about how we act. We can also get real present to our stories. And if we get present to our stories, we can unwrite our assumptions. All right, so let's talk about a story. Let's say you're going to a local meetup or a conference, and it's post-pandemic. So you're going to a real world place again. That's exciting. When you arrive there, you find 3 other people there already. The first person that you run into is on their phone and doesn't look up at all. The second person greets you and welcomes you to the meeting. They get out of their seat and shake your hand. They might, after the pandemic, do the little dance, but right now they get out of their seat and shake your hand. The third person smiles at you and says hello as they are setting up food. As others arrive, the first and second person's behavior remains the same. The first person stays on their phone and doesn't look up, and the second person gets up and greets each new person and welcomes them to the meeting, shaking their hand. The third person continues to attend to the room, setting up the projector, checking sound, etc. All right, so we're going to do a little online survey real quick. What do you think the first person that doesn't look up when you enter the room, what do you think about them? What is true of them?
I don't think they're interested. They're not engaging. They're not engaged.
Okay. If you want to do this live, you can go to the thing. You can also talk. Either way is fine. So I'll accept both. All right, so they're not engaged.
I would agree they're not engaged for whatever reason.
Maybe they're on an important phone call.
Okay. I see nervous or anxious in the chat. Any other guesses about what might be going on?
They may be an introvert by nature and don't, or are socially inept and don't know how to, you know, engage.
Okay.
Or another assumption could be that maybe there's something going on with the event and they need immediate attention from someone. That's another possibility if you're giving them a benefit of the doubt.
Okay, great. Let's talk about our next person. So person number 2. What do you think is true about the second person? If you want to do the Slido online, you can. Otherwise, you can just do like we were doing, talk to me, do in the chat. So this is the second person. They greeted you, shook your hand, shook everyone's hand as you walked in the room. So we see extrovert here.
Friendly, welcoming.
Friendly. Okay, anything else? Maybe the host I see in chat.
Likes the network.
Okay, any other thoughts? Professional I see. Okay.
The designated greeter.
That's right. That might be their job. Okay. All right, let's talk about the genuinely interested in a successful program, trying to create success. All right, let's go on to the next one. How about the third person? The one that was setting up food, they smiled, said hello, but that's all they did. They kept setting up and tending to the room. What do we think about them?
That's their role, is to set up.
So they're doing their job.
Or a little bit shy.
Okay.
I'd say focus at the task at hand.
Yeah, I would think the person was doing their job and they weren't really kind of there. They were just setting up. Observer.
Mom complex also showed up here, an observer.
What is mom complex?
It's my job to take care of everybody.
Ah.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
Helpful.
Helpful. Okay. Those were a lot of assumptions we just made up about 3 people with very little information about what was truly going on in their head. So let's talk about how we take this thoughts, emotions, actions to nonviolent communication, and then use MVC to unwind some of our assumptions. So we've seen this model already. The first thing that happens is an event that happens. We have very few facts. The only facts we have are what we could see with our own eyes. The person that greeted us, if we talk about person 2, they came up to us, shook our hand, said hello. They did that with everyone that entered the room. That's all we know. That's the facts. The thoughts are judgments, assumptions, beliefs, opinions, stories that come up in our head. The antidote to judgment, by the way, is curiosity. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. I'm just going to plant that seed. But so some of the assumptions we made up about that greeter was that they were extroverted. They might not be. They might be actually quite introverted and playing at extroversion because that's their role in the meeting. They could be hosting the meeting. They could like networking. Somebody said they were professional. Professional is a label, which may or may not mean the same thing to everyone. That they're friendly. They could, for all we know, they could hate people. We don't know. We're making stuff up, right? So those are the things that show up as thoughts. Now, here's a question. What emotion, when the second person, if you walked in the room and the second person greeted you, what emotion would you feel?
Would feel welcome.
Yeah.
Happy, relaxed.
Respected.
Okay.
I think I would be comfortable to ask questions like, hey, I'm looking for this, or do you know so-and-so?
Okay.
It depends on how I was feeling that day.
Might depend on how you're feeling that day. You could feel irritated. Are you talking to me? Right. So all of those emotions tend to come out of what we thought about that experience, not all by themselves. They don't show up by themselves. And it happens so fast, we often don't know it's happening. The actions we take are the strategies we use to manage our emotions or needs. So if we have an emotion like irritated, what action might we take if we were irritated with the greeter?
Sit far away from them.
Okay, you might sit far away from them.
You'll be rude.
Could be rude.
I'll probably no eye contact. If I'm really not interested, I'm busy, maybe get on my phone, distracted.
Right. Maybe that's what that person who sat down and was on their phone was thinking. Okay. Allison?
Breathe.
Breathe. Okay. Now, if we felt welcome or respected by that person, what might we do?
Smile. Look in the eyes. Eye contact.
Ask them about themselves, how's their day?
Engage.
Engage.
All right. Now, if you were irritated by them and you stopped giving them eye contact and sat down and got on your phone, what T might that enact for them?
they're going to have an assumption about you. They're going to judge you. They have some kind of judgment.
Yeah, they'll have some sort of judgment. They'll have some sort of emotion, and they'll take some sort of action as a result. Right? So we essentially turn into these like reciprocal, consistent cycles of T's. All right. So here is nonviolent communication in a nutshell. So observations, feelings, needs, requests. So the observations are the actual things we saw. Hey, when you greeted me like that, I felt welcome. Thank you so much for making me feel part of the community. Or, hey, when you greeted me like that, I felt uncomfortable because I'm an introvert and wanted to just sneak into the room before anybody got here and not have to talk to anybody. It's not your fault. I just want you to know that I was nervous about this. I'm going to go sit in the corner and remain quiet for a little while as I get comfortable in the space. So those are some ways you can start communicating about what's going on in your inner self to help people feel A, safer to talk about what's going on in their inner self, but B, have the proper T in reaction to you, or have be better positioned to have a proper response to you. So the first thing is observable facts. They have to be free from evaluation. So I thought when you walked into the room and greeted me is an observable fact. When you were friendly is an assumption. Feelings are emotions or sensations separate from thoughts. So these are actual feeling words. I'm going to offer 2 resources in chat around this, if you feel like looking at them. One is the nonviolent communication list of emotions. And what you will find there is that emotions happen. You can have positive emotions. Hey, that was awesome. Emotions. And you can have heavy or negative emotions. The light or positive emotions happen when you have a need that is met. The heavy or negative emotions happen when you have a need that is not met. So the need for connection, for example, we've all been suffering a little from that over the last year. So that would be an example of a need. So needs are universal to all humans and they're present. They are what our emotion is signaling to us. Emotions are all valid. How we behave because of them is not always valid. But the emotions are always signals for what we need or don't need. And then requests essentially are a question into somebody that is clear, positive, and concrete. It is specific and it is negotiable. If it's not negotiable, it's a demand. And it is often a strategy for resolving needs either being met or not met. So generally speaking, our actions are present to achieve a positive emotion or to avoid a negative emotion. Questions about this model?
Can you share this deck with us or no?
I'm assuming I can.
Oh, you know what? I'm recording. I'm sorry. That was a stupid question.
Yeah, you're recording.
I'm excited. This is awesome. I see how it's a cycle. And then I don't know if I'm supposed to talk right now, but me and my best friend, we, have good conversations. We come in and check each other and see how our well-being is. And we say that it's not our responsibility to figure out or feel or care about how you receive what we tell you. So it's like, if I'm having a conversation with you and you're not appreciating or liking what I'm saying, how you're affecting me, it's not like, it doesn't matter to me how you receive that. Like, I mean, not how you receive it, but like how you deal with, I'm not saying it right.
Here, let me give you some language for it. So all emotions are valid. I am responsible for my own emotions, not anyone else. But I'm also responsible to communicate the impact you had on me. Otherwise, you'll never know if it's hitting me wrong.
Right.
Right. And maybe not necessarily wrong, but just I'm perceiving it one way, you intended it another way. So if I don't ask for clarification, I go off misinterpreting, and then all of a sudden my actions are now out of alignment with what you intended, and you don't understand why.
Right. And we create a bunch of T's. Okay, cool. All right. So in our story, what do we know to be true about the very first person? This was the one that was on his phone, his or her phone, sitting at the table, not looking up.
Oh, they're on the phone. We don't know why. You know, it could be an emergency. They could have gotten bad news. We really don't. All we know is that they're on their phone.
That's
and
it.
Not engaging.
And not, well, they might be very engaged. We don't even know that. What we know is that they're on their phone and they didn't look up or say hello.
Right. Or they're not engaging with the immediate surroundings, only with whoever they're speaking with.
Correct. What if you arrived at the meeting with some people from work and this person was your boss? What stories would you make up then?
I would probably have more insight into what's going on, and you know, so I would probably know the person a little better and might be more sympathetic because I would have
my first gut would be to help. To ask my boss, do you need something? Is everything okay?
Yeah. Yep. We probably would have more context, but we would still be making things up. Right? What do we know to be true? They're looking at their phone and they didn't look up. That's it. That's all we know. Everything else is still a guess. What if it was the new intern? What stories might you make up then?
Oh, it'll be bad. Like, oh, something about time management. Oh, they couldn't have stepped out, or they couldn't have rescheduled, or something. Yeah, less heavyweight.
Depends on the situation.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
Well, it really depends on the situation.
Right.
Right. But if it were an intern and I was going into the room, I would expect the intern to be interactive, and I would be a little bit, red flag. That's really not the kind of behavior that I would want to an intern to emulate, you know, or to be around. So I would have a little red flag for me if it was an intern.
Well, that's judgy, me too. But yeah, I mean, I get right.
And it would also not be the same action. So I would think, like, if that were my boss working, I would be over there going, hey, is there something going on? How can I help you?
Right.
I want, you know, obviously it's got to be something from work, right? Or maybe not. But yeah, with an intern, my action would be different. I would not go over and say, is everything okay? Can I help you?
Right. And isn't that interesting?
Working. The intern might be working on something related to the project, or so really, again, it depends on the situation.
Totally does. And isn't it interesting?
Really, it's not one size fits all.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how many stories of negative things came up about that intern, who is probably the least skilled about office etiquette?
Yep.
Where the boss, who's supposed to be the most skilled at office etiquette, should know better. Right? Isn't that interesting? How those judgments came up about those people just because of their role in relation to you. Right.
Yeah, I think the expectation from an intern is that they would want to make a good impression, and this is not doing that. But I would certainly say, what's going on?
Cool, which is a good catch for your judgments. What's going on, right? So here's the list of emotions. And if you haven't pulled up the emotions list, this is the basic, the sort of high level headings of the emotion words that come from the nonviolent communication list. If you've watched the movie Inside Out, these should look pretty familiar. Inside Out is that Pixar movie where we get to travel along with the characters inside a little girl's head. And they are happy, happiness, sadness, disgust, anger, and fear. These are essentially core emotions, these 6. Almost all of our emotions can be drilled back to one of these. And these are the needs that we have as human beings.
I see that play is in there, and that's so beautiful because I have a career coach, and she tells me it's a book, I forgot the name of it. And she says that being an adult, like sometimes you forget that you do need time to play. Like you need time to remember how it feels to just do carefree things that you like and be like a kid. So this is really nice.
Yeah. Play is one of our primary tools for learning. That's how kids learn. It's how every animal in the animal kingdom learns. Like that's how we learn, is through play. And it's safer to learn during play because there's not a lot of risk. Anything else standing out here for anyone?
That we want connection.
Yeah, we do want connection.
We want connection, but we want autonomy.
Mm-hmm. Autonomous connection.
Especially teenagers.
Right.
Want your help, but I don't want your help. I'm like, wait.
But so many of these needs have not been met for various reasons over the last 12 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big deal. And there are lots of people handling that with various different strategies. So strategies are the tactics we employ, the actions we take to deal with our feelings and those needs. So a good example in this past year, I've been doing occasionally, I will take phone calls this year. I don't like to talk on the phone. So just casual catch-up phone calls. I did more of those this year. I sent mail this year as a way to provide connection to friends and loved ones.
Oh, wow.
These are all strategies I did to work on connection. Zoom became a part of my everyday life. So that is another way that I worked to get connection.
Mailed out Christmas cards this year. Well, last year I made it a point to mail them out, and I was so excited. I thought it was just like the so adult thing to do because like my aunts and grandmas do that, and so I'm like, oh my God, I'm turning into like a little old lady, and I'm gonna go get some stamps, stickers with my address on it. But I'm gonna keep it up, and I'm gonna do it again this year because the feedback that I got, people were just really, I mean, it touched their heart, and I could hear it over the phone because, you know, this was our first Christmas in the pandemic. And, you know, sending cards and writing little thank you notes and like hand, you know, written things, it really matters. But I liked my Christmas card.
Yeah. So there are two kinds of strategies. There's a strategy that you take intentionally, the one where you've stopped your thought and emotion cycle, and the strategy that just happens because it's the one our brain has programmed us to take. This last time this scenario happened, these things were true. What action do you want to take to avoid having that again? Those are the strategies that we get programmed to. That's the priming. So here's how to make requests. Let's talk about these really quick. One, we want to make requests that are positive. So let's say we were talking, we wanted to figure out, that intern was in a meeting and we wanted to figure out what was going on. So one kind of request is a request for inquiry. This is a request that helps you unwrap or unravel your assumptions or beliefs or judgments. So Sheila's question, what's going on, is a really good starter question to find out what is true for the person in the room on their phone. What's going on? That's an inquiry. You could even wrap it up and say, hey, I noticed you were on your phone. I'm worried that you're not finding value in this meeting. It's just something I often come to. That's an assumption I usually make. What's going on? How can I help? Right? Those are all words of inquiry to find out. Or, am I right? Is there something I can do to make this better? That's another inquiry kind of request. And then you have the other kind of request, which is an action. So let's say it's that same intern and you say, hey, what's going on? And they said, oh, I just had a text from my mom or whatever. You could say, all right, I understand that sometimes we want to answer texts from our parents. And would you be willing to take a suggestion on behavior? Would that be okay? Notice that's a consent check. We want to make sure they actually want to hear our information. And you could say something like, when I came in and saw you on the phone, I thought you were disengaged. I also had some other stories in my head that you didn't care about this, or that you weren't interested in making a good impression on people around you. What if next time you hold the text and wait until after the meeting to respond to your mom? Would that be okay? And then they can say yes or no or counteroffer. They might say no, well, in normal circumstances, yes, but my dad's had surgery today and that was really important to me. And we would probably go, oh yeah, that's totally reasonable. Sorry, I interjected, right? Or they might say, yeah, okay, can do that. But the reality is that they are free to take whatever action they want. And it might not be one you like. Okay. So positive action, specific enough to be doable pretty immediately, and negotiable, open to yes, no, or an alternative. Okay. All right, here's the formula. If you're looking to practice this, my recommendation is that you journal. If you're starting to practice these things, is that you journal how you want to phrase this. When you, observable fact, or when an observable fact happened, I feel an emotion word. There's a got you here. If you say I feel like, or I feel that, I feel like you were blah, da, 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 right? That is a story. You have moved into the because. The emotion word is the impact it had on you. And there's some really cool, there was a really cool study they did somewhere where two people were in an MRI and one person told a story and the other person's brain activated in the exact same way as the person telling the story. This is our neurosympathetic nervous system. We are hardwired to have empathy for one another. And the minute you share an emotion, the person on the other side understands the impact it had on you. So it is important to bring your emotions to the office. And then the because is all the met or unmet needs, stories, beliefs, opinions, judgments, right? Here's a good example. I was in an organization where I think I had 6 bosses in 3 years. It was one of those that kept moving me around because of restructuring and things like that. Or somebody left and then a new boss came. It was just madness. And I think somewhere around the 3rd or 4th boss, here's something I could have said. Hey, you keep, this is now my 3rd boss this year, or in this last 2 years. I feel discomfort and maybe a word there might be nervous because I have a need of consistency and connection, and I'm having a hard time connecting to my boss under such a short time frame. Or I might say, because I also need some autonomy and I'd like to have some choice in these shifts. Would it be possible for me to be consulted before you move me to another boss again? They might say no, but they might say yes, right? So could I just have a conversation with you before we make these moves next time?
Yeah, so Jessica, I know being in corporate America and IT, and the second one, the I feel, was not embraced. It was not an okay statement. Mm-hmm. And so I would take out the I feel, and I would produce observations rather than saying how it made me feel. And I think over time it's gotten better, but it was a real struggle to not have the ability to openly discuss how people were feeling.
Yeah.
I agree, and I've been in situations where, especially when where the feeling that I had then got intensified by being told that I was being emotional, and then on top of what I was feeling, now I was feeling that I was being sexually discriminated against because I was being told that, you're an emotional woman, mm-hmm. and you need to pull back on those emotions, and And then that anger gets even more intensified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. And then when you have anger, then you're now perceived as
the angry woman.
An angry, yes, a difficult woman, right? Which is kind of worse, honestly, in some ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's, so I've been in those environments before too. I am really bold. So I will just keep it coming, you know, and whatever, I can always find another job is sort of how I've always thought about it. And here's some techniques and strategies I've used to deal with that situation. Oh, you're being too emotional. I would look at them and go, what's too emotional? We're human beings. We have emotions. What is that? I had an emotion. You have emotions. In fact, you're having an emotion right now as a result of me sharing my emotions. Let's talk about that. How do we get to a place where we're allowed to be whole and complete humans? And I would just lean into that. And that can sometimes come with even more resistance. I just don't stay in those places long. I personally have a value of wholeness. And so I go to places where that's free to show up. And so I advocate for a while. I do a lot of, you know, modeling the behavior for a while. And if no shift happens and it's still resistance, I find somewhere else to be. Those are the strategies I've employed. But I consider it, I know that in most environments, I'm pretty privileged. And I consider it a responsibility to make space for that to happen so that other people who don't have that privilege have space for that to happen.
When you say privilege, what do you mean?
I'm white. I come from a middle to upper class family background. I have had really good success in my career. I generally, I'm an A-type personality, so I get shit done, which also puts you in a position of privilege from they have a hard time firing you perspective. So there's a lot of privilege in my life. And because I have that privilege and I'm not afraid to speak out, even when my womanness does become a problem, that also creates a privilege too. I have a confidence privilege.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I always felt like I had a privilege because I had self-awareness around emotional intelligence where a lot of the people I worked with had not. So I felt like, kind of like you were saying, is I very much try to share out, and because I know that it brings value to tell people how they can improve. And a lot of times it works. And then, like you said, sometimes it doesn't. And then if you're miserable, you go somewhere else.
Right. That's right. Vulnerability begets vulnerability. You can model it for a while and then people start copying you. So that's essentially the idea. And you can read more on vulnerability if you follow anything that Brene Brown does. You'll find more about vulnerability and shame.
Oh my goodness, I saw her, I saw a webinar with her. And when you said that, it reminded me, I have a whole bunch of quotes from her on my wall.
Yep. I think I've got one too. Yep, I've got one too. So, yeah. Okay.
I have like, courage is contagious.
Yeah. Okay, so here we're going to really unpack one of them. So write down or think of one or all three of these. A situation in which you regret your behavior, a situation in which you wish the outcome had been different, or a situation in which you interacted with a person that you always dread talking to or interacting with. Okay. All right, practice makes better. So serve yourself some tea. What was your thought, emotion, action cycle when you did this? Use MVC to break that apart, and then use the MVC formula to craft your message. If you could do it over, what would you do instead? I'm going to give you 5 minutes for this. I'll be watching the clock, and then we can do a Q&A.
Can you go back to the 3 questions?
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. If you happen to finish before the 5 minutes, give me a little thumbs up reaction on the Zoom. And we're about halfway there. About 2 minutes left. See, a couple people are finishing up. One more minute. All right, I'm going to go ahead and slide forward. I'm going to move past this actually. So this is how to reach me. Let's just do a live Q&A, and feel free to use the chat if that's easier for you on the Q&A side. So this is how to reach me if you want to afterwards, but I'm just going to leave this up while we chat. So what did you discover while you were doing that exercise?
It gave me a little bit more depth to realize that I had assumed a lot when I was approaching the situation. Probably should have asked more questions up front.
I took something that had happened in the past, and when I wrote through my NVC script, it was pretty much the way that I had done it, but that's because I have the benefit of having done this type of work. And it, most of the time, will be very productive. With this particular person, it did result in some appropriate action, but reluctantly from them, because the person responding to you needs to have a certain level of awareness to recognize or accept what you're describing as being your need. And if they do, then of course they perhaps will respond very favorably. And if they don't have that awareness and still, can't think of the word I want to use, but kind of block that need, then it could still, and as it did in this case, still result in reasonable action, even being that it wasn't with understanding.
Yeah, you made a couple of things come up for me, Allison. One of the things is having this skill. Once you get good at this skill, you also have a position of privilege, and helping others come to realizations around this becomes also part of advocacy and allyship for other people. The other thing to state is I live in the South of the United States. We do polite yeses here as a matter of behavior, where the yes actually means no, but they didn't want to have a conflict in that moment. So one thing I like to do when I make a request is wrap a little statement around it that says, it's okay if you say no to this. It's okay if you say yes to this. It's also okay if you have a different solution that you'd rather do. And really just let them know they have permission not to say no to me and it not be offensive.
Have you ever read Never Split the Difference?
It's on my list.
Okay, so he actually talks about that, that one of the worst things is to get a yes on your first try, because typically that means the person is just disregarding you. and if they just say yes, then it's kind of a, not acknowledging really what you're saying. And so it's kind of interesting. There is something really fascinating about that.
Yeah, there's so in that vein, Never Split the Difference is really a negotiation book. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Correct. So that's really about negotiation, which is part of what you're doing when you make a request. And so we have this book, Nonviolent Communications, that I'm recommending, which I'll throw in chat. And I don't have the link for the other one that I'm about to recommend. So this is the book, the link for the book, Nonviolent Communications. And the other book I would recommend is a book called The Science of Trust by John Gottman. And that one really dives into how we build trust. Now that one is designed for the science of trust in couples, but it's just a relationship with a romantic tone to it. All of the things we're talking about are good relationship skills that you can use in every aspect of your life. I'll type that one in. So.
Jessica, you said you have a lot of therapist friends. You said you did your research with the therapist to confirm some of these theories or whatever you had in your presentation.
Well, they've done, the therapy industry has done the research. I took it then to somebody who is certified as a therapist and said, I'm not telling anybody wrong, right? So right. I did interpret the knowledge correctly. That was really what I did, yeah.
Because this felt really like a session. And this was like really so nice. The whole thing of us being quarantined and not being able to have the connection that we used to, and then you trying to reel us in on how we are gonna communicate, with people. Like, this was really nice. I love this. Thank you.
Great, no problem.
Great session.
Yeah, I think we're at the end of the hours. Do I have that right, Sheila? Yeah, anybody have any other questions? I have a few minutes I can hang out. I know we started a little bit late because of the hiccup.
Yeah, so we have a 15-minute break in between this and the next set of sessions, and I'm gonna put those into the chat.
I'm gonna stop recording now as well.
So Jessica, why is it the